Estate cars are boring. There's nothing interesting about boxes on wheels. We'd all rather be driving fashionable SUVs, said the masses. And that's exactly what the masses got. SUVs are in abundance, but they somehow haven't killed off the humble estate car just yet. In fact, the estate car is fighting back with more and more eye-catching models, such as this 508 SW. I mean, sure, it might not be as imposing as an SUV or as flash as Mr. and Mrs. Smith's big grilled monster in the driveway, but there is something quite seductive to this Peugeot. The very latest design language with that mesmerising grille that spills from side to side of the car, curious daytime running lights that look a bit like sabre teeth, and just a really lovely flowing design from nose to tail with no hard edges. Lots of cars these days feel like they've been drawn with rulers. This is curvy and elegant and sophisticated. SW in Peugeot speak means estate car, and this is obviously the estate of the handsome 508 saloon. This top-of-the-line car in GT specification looks great with its snazzy 18-inch alloy wheels, darkened trim, and really premium-looking rear end. There's nothing workaday about this estate car. It's a properly upmarket affair from Peugeot. The extremely civilised design isn't exclusive to the exterior either, because in here is a sea of interesting textured materials, high-quality surfaces, and a dashboard that just frankly makes everything else look a little bit dull. Now, all cars come standard with this large 10-inch infotainment system. It runs Peugeot's latest software and it's fine, it's okay. It's maybe not quite as fast as what it could be, but the fact the screen is 10 inches is a really nice, easy to use size on the move. However, what most people will do, which is what I've done pretty much the whole time driving this car, is plug in my phone and run Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. It's a system that everybody's used to. It's as intuitive as using your own mobile phone, just on a different screen. So I wonder how many days OEM infotainment systems have left in them, to be honest, because who doesn't plug in their phone these days? However, a really nice physical touch of Peugeot's own system are these piano shortcut keys. We see it across the range. It's really nice for diving in and out of menus and having something physically to anchor onto on the dashboard. It means there's no blind stabbing of the screen whilst you're driving, though I would like the air conditioning controls to be physical as well. They go into a menu, but then you have to dial them up on the screen, which is a little bit annoying and not the most ergonomic thing. What I do find to be very ergonomic is Peugeot's iCockpit, which is what they call this sort of layout, where you've got a 12-inch digital instrument panel sitting above a smaller steering wheel. Now, this instrument panel is totally customizable. You can have various modes and dials and whatever you fancy in there in terms of information at your fingertips. I really like the navigation mode. It sort of apes one of Audi's systems where it overlays the nav on here, and it just means you don't have to keep looking down at the navigation. It's just a glance away, and it's really beautifully integrated. The graphics are really nice on here. Now, it's well documented that this lower steering wheel setup doesn't get on with everybody, but to be honest, that tends to be the minority, and only those who are particularly tall. Those of average height should sit behind the wheel perfectly comfortable. There's loads of adjustment in the wheel, loads of adjustment in the seating, and yeah, I find Peugeot's actually to not be an issue. And one of the bonuses of this little steering wheel is that when you're trying to parallel park, it's less wrestling with the wheel. It's a smaller motion to get the wheels turned. Small thing, but something that actually helps the day-to-day of living with this car. This being a GT car, it means it gets full leather upholstery with this really lovely quilted effect on it. The seats have plenty of adjustment to them. They're heated. They're also massaging, which is very nice on those lengthy trips where you're just feeling a little bit stressed out and your lower back's tied in knots. It's not Mercedes-Benz S-Class levels of massaging in here, to be totally fair with you, but it is nice. It's definitely a nice luxury to have, and the passenger seat also gets one as well. Rear passengers are given the very same leather treatment with good levels of legroom. Because this optional glass panoramic roof doesn't stretch all the way back, it means that headroom isn't compromised. Although that middle passenger does have to suffer the transmission hump in the floor. What about the boot? Because estate cars are all about the booty. Open the electric tailgate for a plentiful 530 litres. Folding those rear seats down expands this to 1,780 litres, making the 508 SW a really versatile family car. couple of interesting but pricey options that this 508 has is the glass panoramic sunroof that can open on sunnier days than what we have today, and also night vision, which is a good asset if you drive down plenty of country roads and want to spot a deer, but I'd say generally speaking, I think most owners would save the cash and spend it on other options they desire more. Now let's talk more specifically about what's under the skin of this specific 508 SW, because it's the plug-in hybrid model, the 225. And that means it has a 1.6 litre turbocharged petrol engine and an electric motor. And that means that it can drive on solely electricity, a combination of combustion and electricity, or just combustion alone. The 11.8 kilowatt hour battery under the floor gives a predicted range of 33 to 39 miles on pure EV and can be charged from a home wall box in 1 hour 45 minutes. With the two power variants working together, you'll get from 0 to 62 in 8.5 seconds and onto a top speed of 155 miles per hour. So let's talk about how the car behaves just as an EV for a moment. So 33 to 39 miles of pure EV range, I'd say that's pretty much true. I've been getting about 33 miles out of a full charge on the battery. Obviously that's weather dependent and all of those things that come with EV powertrains. But 33 miles is pretty good. There's enough to do your average commute and back purely on electricity. And the petrol engine will only kick in whenever it requires more power, dependent upon your throttle position. And can actually serve as an electric generator, which brings me on to my favourite thing about this powertrain, in fact in all Peugeots, is that you can go into the electric settings here and select e-save mode, and that will kick the engine on and it will charge the battery as you're going. So if you don't have somewhere to charge this car at home, obviously ideally you'd start every day with 100% battery and use it on electric as much as possible, but if you don't have access to a charger immediately, you can force the car to charge the battery as you go and arrive at your destination or arrive in a more populated area with battery power to use. When running purely on electricity, it's as blissful as you imagine most EVs to be. It's quiet, it has an extra sort of element of relaxation without a combustion engine continuously churning away in the background. There's no vibrations, and it's sort of responsive enough in this mode. It's not like a Tesla. You do get torque delivered relatively immediately, but it's only about 108 brake horsepower when it's just using electricity alone. Now when it's in its hybrid mode and using a combination of the two, that's where you're going to get the strongest levels of performance. However, I will say, again with this sort of Peugeot hybrid powertrain, that switching between engine and electricity or using a combination of both isn't as subtle as what it is in some rivals. If you put your foot down, there is a delay as the car tries to work out exactly what you're trying to do. The engine fires. This 8-speed gearbox is reasonably smooth, but it's not necessarily the fastest acting. So you do get a little bit of hesitation, and you can hear when that step change happens, and some rivals just quite simply do that better. But once you are up and going or cruising the motorway, it's a really lovely, relaxing car to drive in. There's a little bit of wind noise and an increasing level of road noise if you go for larger alloy wheels. But really, the suspension setup's really cosseting. It's generally quite quiet in here. In this GT trim, it's just all too easy to sink into these quilted leather seats and just sit back and let the cruise control get on with the journey, quite frankly. It's a really lovely car to cover distance in, I have to say. One of the big benefits of cars that are plug-in hybrids has to be the benefit in kind savings for those who are using this as a company car, but also the overall savings in terms of fuel costs if you're using it on electricity predominantly. Like I say, if you can plug this car in overnight, you might not touch the petrol pumps for quite a while. Now this GT car starts at £42,000, which is pretty pricey, but actually the entry-level Allure trim of the 508 SW PHEV is £8,000 cheaper and comes with many of the options that you'd want. So I'd maybe go for the lower specification and put in a few choice options instead. I mean, Peugeot claims 166 to 235 mpg out of this car, and whilst that will very much depend upon how frequently you plug it in and how many miles you cover on electricity, it's actually proving quite efficient and may even be a good alternative to those people covering distances in diesel cars. The new 508 SW PHEV is a truly commendable effort, and whilst it's a little bit on the pricey side, its other virtues may even have a few people thinking about cancelling the order for that new SUV. Head to yesauto.com for the latest car news and reviews, and don't forget to check us out on social media. We're in all the usual places such as Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Simply search for Yes Auto.